Welcome back to Race Report, everyone. Today we are looking at the 2021 Imola Grand Prix. Round 2 of the 2021 season is now in the bag. And what a race! What a race! It literally had everything. It had crashes, safety cars, red flags, and a battle at the front as well there for a little bit too. Brilliant. It was shaping up for a great season, for sure. Let's get started with the race. This weekend, there's a wet start after a fairly normal qualifying, I'd say. The qualifying is looking good now with that Hamilton-Verstappen battle, but the wet start really threw up some interesting challenges. There's a few drivers that went for the wet tyres over the intermediate tyres. That was an interesting strategy gamble, as we saw AlphaTauri do that. They usually do take that opposite stance to those around them. Didn't quite come off this time, which I thought was a bit of a shame. Like Ocon in the Alpine, he dived in super early because he realised it wasn't working. Gasly tried to make it work for arguably too long. He dropped down the grid once those tyres started to wear, which was a shame to see. Vettel also started from the pit lane. Not much to say about that. The Aston Martin cars have been woefully underwhelming this year. Obviously, they're trying to fight the new regulations. They feel like they've been targeted, what have you. But ultimately, the brake issues they had this weekend, I don't think were down to any regulation stuff. They just didn't work properly. And Vettel found that out, started from the pit lane, had to retire later in the race. Definitely not helping his cause to get back to form. Back to the wet weather, and cars were sliding around everywhere. It was kind of interesting to see who was keeping it on the track, to be honest, because, we had offs on the formation lap, we had offs on the safety cars, we had offs just all the time, randomly. It was kind of fun. It was kind of interesting. It was kind of fun. Straight away, even before there was any of that, we had Verstappen taking the lead off the line. He started in third, don't forget. It was actually Perez that was on alongside Hamilton in second, but Verstappen, wow, what a launch. I don't remember a better launch than that. Straight up, straight alongside Hamilton. Perez didn't really factor into that battle at all, and he managed to get past him. It was a little bit of argy-bargy. Hamilton tried to stick it out and ran foul of the curb. Potentially, he definitely did damage to his wing there, potentially damaged the floor as well, and yeah, I bet his spine was a little bit hurt after that one as well. So it's a fantastic start. Like, Norris lost a lot of places, which is a bit of a shame, but it was typical wet start, I think. And then what was also typical of a wet start, safety car on lap 1. Latifi slid off, came back onto the track and collided with Nikita Mazepin. A real shame because Latifi qualified amazing. It was the first time, I think his first time in Q2, right? So he managed to get himself into Q2, qualified really well. It looked like Williams might actually be on for a result. But then, first lap, he collides with Mazepin. He didn't come onto the track properly at all. Mazepin had nowhere to go. They bumped, Latifi hits the wall, and we get a safety car. And to carry on the sliding, Schumacher crashes under the safety car whilst warming his tyres, completely rips off his front wing. And unfortunately for him, where the debris was left was in the pit lane exit. So he couldn't even pit to get a new wing until they cleared that. So he had to do a couple of laps with a broken front wing whilst the marshals were out there collecting stuff. Another slider was Perez under the safety car as well. And crucially for him is he lost a couple places after that slide. Naturally, you're off the track. So Ricciardo and I think Gasly went past him. He came back onto the track and overtook those two cars. You can't do that. That's overtaking under the safety car. So he got a 10-second penalty. I don't think anybody really complained about that. That's just something you can't do. Which, again, real shame because it kind of nullified him from the race. But ultimately, it didn't really have an effect because he was one of the people affected throughout the race by the conditions, and it wouldn't be the last time he went off the track. And from that point on, I think everything settled down for a little bit. We were getting into that transitional period of like, when do people swap from the inters, slicks, and what effect does that have on the grid? And honestly, there wasn't a lot going on then. I mean, usually that is when you see somebody take a big bold move themselves way up the grid, but it really didn't work out like that, did it? I think maybe Vettel pitted for slick tyres because he was so far down already, so he pitted for slicks early, and everybody realised it wasn't the time for slicks, and then there was like a couple of laps where Vettel was like, right, okay, starting to get there now, and then within 2 laps everybody had pitted for slicks, and the grid just kind of stayed the same, which was a bit of a shame, honestly, because I thought that would have been a nice way to shake things up. But it was kind of uniform there for a little bit, and I thought that might be us to the end of the race, because the teams didn't have to pit for another set of tyres. They could just stay on these mediums for the rest of the race now. But then, carnage on lap 32. First, Hamilton slides off the track, as so many others have done in this race. Slides off the track, crunches his front wing into the barrier, and is honestly stationary for a long time as he works out what to do next. Like, his nose is pointing at the barrier. He can't go forwards, so he has to stick it in reverse through a gravel trap, and get back onto the track. At this point, he's a lap down on the leaders, and it looks like he is completely out of this race. He's down in, I think it was 9th, wasn't it? But then, more carnage, which saved Hamilton's race, let's be honest. Russell runs into Bottas. Now that's a massive instant. I'm really glad everybody walked away from that. Bottas was clearly quite shaken, quite winded, but man, that could have been so much worse than it was. And it's Imola as well. I mean, this is where Senna died. You don't want to see crashes that big around a track with this kind of infamy, really. So I'm glad everybody got okay. I'm glad the halos protected as they should. Yeah, because that was a scary one. Russell says, Russell went for a move on Bottas, and this is maybe another point that we should be talking about. Why was Bottas down in 9th, being overtaken by a Williams? That's another point for another video, I think. But Bottas was down in 9th, being overtaken by Russell in the Williams. Russell says Bottas moved out to the right and squeezed Russell. So Russell then had to touch the paint, maybe even a bit of the grass. It's still wet. He'd lost it completely, veered straight into the side of Bottas, and took them both out at 180 miles an hour. Now, scary stuff. Glad the guys are all right. But ultimately, that's thrown away points for Williams. Russell could have got points for Williams there, and that's a massive shame. And, it's created a bit of friction between him and the Mercedes team now. I mean, everybody knows, everybody assumed he's going to be in that car. Maybe next season, maybe the season after. At some point, most people understand he'll be in that car. So it's not a great look to be causing that kind of tension, fighting for 9th place. Anyway, all of that instant helped Hamilton because it caused a red flag. So, everybody goes back to the pits. We chill out for a little bit. Hamilton gets his nose repaired, gets his tyres changed. So he's now ready to go again. Everybody's unlapped as well, which is very important. So at this point, Hamilton is in 9th. He's in a proper 9th, and he needs to side through the field to get any significant score. Just like Bottas was meant to do as well from his qualifying. And off he went, straight away, hunting down everyone. And he did it. He managed to finish 2nd, when Bottas couldn't get past these guys, these midfield chargers. Hamilton just took them one after another after another. I think Norris gave him the most trouble. It took him about 3 laps. He got them all. And it's a shame that we didn't have more time for him to catch up to Verstappen. But ultimately, Verstappen is a deserved winner. Verstappen took it off the line. He controlled the race. He's a deserved winner, definitely. A quick note on Norris, I mentioned him there. Fantastic throughout the race. He obviously was disappointed in qualifying because he ran off the track, got his time deleted by tiny margins. He then was slow off the line. I think he lost like 2 or 3 places off the line at the start of the race. Then he absolutely bossed it. Much like Hamilton, took him one after another. He moved himself up. At the restart after the red flag, he was 3rd. And he strapped on the softs rather than the mediums. Most people went for the mediums because you still had to do about 30 odd laps, I think it was. He strapped on the softs and he just went for it. And he got Leclerc straight away. And he was hunting Verstappen there for a little bit before, obviously, Verstappen just went off into the distance. Norris had to manage his tyres a little bit and wait for Hamilton to find him. But it wasn't only him that would look good. The Ferraris looked good as well. And that's not something we've been able to say with confidence for a while now. That feels good. Like Leclerc did well, like spinning on the formation lap. But he had a fantastic race. Sainz did surprisingly well. I think even he on the radio was like, how many mistakes am I going to make today? Because he had a couple offs as well. But they're 4th and 5th. So that's a really good race for Ferrari. Something they didn't have last season, and it looks like their recovery's going pretty well. A quick note on the Alpines as well. I kind of touched on it with the Astons. Just underwhelming. Both the Astons and the Alpines are underwhelming so far. You expect better from teams that are challenging from 3rd in the championship last season. They barely get any screen time nowadays. Like the best they can do is like toward the back end of the points, and that's a shame, honestly, because we want fast cars racing each other up and down the field, like preferably up toward the top end, and we're just not getting that from those two, despite what we saw last season, and it's a shame, honestly. Overall, I thought it was a corker of a race. There's plenty to talk about coming out of this, but the main thing I think for me to take away is we have a real championship battle. And it's probably our first real championship battle in so long. I'm so happy it's here. I'm really, really looking forward to the coming season and what we have lined up for the rest of the year. It's going to be great. What did you guys think of the race? Is there any takeaways that you have? Is there anybody I've not mentioned that you thought was particularly outstanding? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one.